Well, good day again, Red Deer. It's Mayor Ken here with you again. You know, it's always a pleasure, a tremendous pleasure, an honor, frankly, to be with you again today. And I am in what I would call ground zero of downtown, and that is the Downtown Business Association. Not only do they have a splendid, wonderful, beautiful office and location to serve you, but they have quite an amazing staff. And I'm here this morning with Executive Director Amanda Gould. And Amanda, you know, you and I go back a good, 10 years or so. And I just wanted to thank you, Amanda, on behalf of council and our whole community for what you do in the downtown. You have been a standard bearer here. You've done all things downtown, and you've done them extremely well. And we just want to say thank you for that. So, folks, it's a pleasure being on board, and let's get to it.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for those comments. That's very generous of you. Okay, so straight into it. On Monday, Council heard the quarterly crime stats update from the Red Deer RCMP.
Sure.
So can you talk about the benefits to the next generation 911 related technologies and an update on the upgrades in our communication centers?
Absolutely, you know, and thank you for bringing the crime stats into the conversation. I'll certainly get to 911 in a second, but you know, when I looked at those crime stats from a citizen perspective, the great good news story, and that's what Superintendent Glassford was telling council yesterday, that it was a great story from the perspective that property crime, persons crime, and overall criminal code offenses were way down in Red Deer in 2022, and they've been trending that way now for the last 3 years. So that was really, really encouraging. The 911 side is, you know, how shall I say, you know, an old baby boomer, dare I say, you know, sort of new territory in a context. So basically what will happen now, we have 2 call centers, one in Edmonton, one in Red Deer. What will happen when you call in on Next Generation 911 is you'll have improved location accuracy because this is all cellular and so on. You'll have mapping of sites. So for example, when an officer is en route to a call or whatever, he or she will be able to pull up the site and map it in real time and so on. There'll be the ability for first responders and so on to pinpoint locations in apartment buildings, high rises, things like that. So the technology will improve the accuracy. It'll obviously improve the ability for first responders to engage more frequently. And typically, and I've never called 911, thankfully. My family has had to do that. But typically when you're calling 911, you're obviously in a state of some kind of distress, either physical, mental, car accident, things like this. So your ability to give a simple address may be compromised or challenged. Well, I think I'm here, I think I'm there, or I'm not really sure where I am, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, with the technology in your phone and what's coming in 911, we'll be able to pinpoint it and so on. So there'll be that elevated opportunity that we didn't have before. So it is extremely encouraging. I have to say that I was quite excited by it because there are different age groups that call 911. You may get a 5-year-old child that's calling 911 because of an accident in the home or whatever the case may be. You may get a senior that's calling. A new Canadian, for example, a new Red Deerian, you know, somebody with language challenges, things like that. So it's a very exciting change in 911. As to the call center, I think your second question was around improvements to our call center. Mm-hmm. You know, the old mayor is going to come up a little blank this morning because it's not a question we asked yesterday or I went into detail. Certainly our admin people can speak to that. You know, our general manager on the safety side and so on would be able to give you an update. What we have, and we're grateful to have in our city, and this is why we have a call center, but we have what we call a center of excellence on 32nd Street. And I can tell you this, if things weren't going well, I would know about it. I just don't know the extent of everything going well, so I'll just say that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So are we just veering off script for a second? Are we one of the people is this new to Alberta, this next generation?
Yes, it is new to Alberta. There are centers now in Edmonton and Red Deer. Red Deer's been chosen as a center site. Edmonton's been considered as a center site. We're not new in the 911 field, like the RCMP Central Dispatch. That's not new at all, but the technology is new as it relates to it. So this is not strictly a new thing for Red Deer, but it's the technology that's new.
Right, I see. I understand. Okay, so we're going to move on and ask a question. We're going to dig into the shelter. It's a hot topic on everybody's lips. And yesterday, Council received an update on the mitigation strategies implemented in our rail yards district a year ago now.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of the strategies put into place?
Yeah, absolutely. And this was a requirement when we put the mitigation strategies in place. It was a year ago, right around, for the sake of a week or so, it's been exactly a year since we started the mitigation strategies. So there are some practical mitigation strategies related to the site of the shelter, which was fencing, for example. And there's been some quite some improvements to make the site as a decent place to be. In addition to fencing, there's also security. So security was hired, 24/7 security was hired. In addition to that, there was a grant program, which I'll speak a little bit in detail around because I think our viewers would be interested in this. There was a grant program established by Council a year ago as part of the mitigation strategies called the Vandalism and Graffiti Grant. $50,000 was laid aside in that grant. Only $2,200 of it has been spent. So administration came to us yesterday and said we'd be well served to push the boundary beyond rail yards. So, I'm not quite sure, I'm sort of drawing sort of a 6 or 8 or 10 block circle here to say that is rail yards, kind of thing. And I may be even short on that, but one of the things that admin recommended yesterday is pushing the boundary open so that more people could subscribe to the $50,000. And, this is one thing that Council, and I'll say to our viewers this morning, is that if you're in an affected area outside of rail yards, look for some changes coming shortly that'll push the boundary outside, because we want people to subscribe to this grant. We want people protected. The other part of the mitigation strategy is something very familiar to your organization, Amanda, and that's the clean team and the work that's being done. Which again, I'll blow your own horn here because often we don't blow our own horn, but you've been in that space for years, and it's just been amazing what you've done. One of the stats that we heard again on the whole issue of mitigation strategies is pretty astounding. But one of the stats we heard around the clean team and the job that it does in the past 12 months is 37,000 pounds of garbage and refuse, if you will. So the old banker in me calculates it quickly, kind of thing. Say, wow, 17 tons. When you think about 17 tons, like woo, But that's really an indication of how hard you have tackled the problem, how hard the issue and the dedication that you show and the city shows in moving things along. Statistically, one of the encouraging reports, and this was a 12-month tracking report on everything from loitering to vandalism to 211 response, all those things. The statistics are trending in the right way, and that success is being shown here as we go along. Our administrative person talked yesterday, and I don't know all of the expression, but it was a bit of a play on words about time. She said if you want to feed yourself today, cook porridge. If you want to shelter yourself in the future, plant a tree, and so on. So we're in that sort of porridge to tree stage, as it relates to the shelter. The report is very, very contemporary from the perspective of, with our challenges trying to find a permanent shelter. We have to address, obviously, what a temporary shelter continues to look like, and where does that go? How do we provide some respite for people, but at the same time ensuring people can flourish and make a living on the business side. So the report indicated that we are trending in a good direction from the mitigation itself. However, we will have to, when we come around to the temporary shelter again, we will have to consider tweaks to it. Are there things we can do better, do more of, do less of? And one of them definitely was the vandalism grant and how we can help businesses in that area. So it was a good news report. Given the social challenges, that we have, there are a lot of dedicated people working in that space. One of the statistics that jumped out at me was 41% of agency people that are actively in that space are suffering from PTSD. So, that's an extremely, I said there's almost about half of our agency people are suffering from PTSD. And it's small wonder when you consider the mental health issues, the poverty issues, the addiction issues, the safety issues, all of those things that you and I today are very fortunate that we likely won't experience, or certainly wouldn't experience on a day-to-day basis. So it's a sobering statistic. We should never, ever forget that behind a report like that are human beings on every side. And as our manager of Safe Communities, Kristen Walsh, reminded us yesterday, this is really a story about humanity, on every side. So I thought it was a great report. It certainly, I think, was one of the strongest reports I've ever had, and I've been on council for 10 years. It was really a tremendous report to council.
So this was a collaborative approach to concerns expressed by visitors to our downtown.
Yes.
Why is this important, and who are the parties at the table?
Well, a terrific question, and when you think about collaboration, I think we're maturing, if I might say it that way. I hope that's not a bad word. When I say maturing as it relates to collaboration, sometimes collaboration from a government perspective is, we want you to be our partner, but we still want you to do what we say. And of course, that's not collaboration. I mean, we all get that. That's not collaboration. We understand that. So we're maturing, and I'm really proud of our own city in the last, I'll just say 12 months or so, that we are actually opening our own doors. You and I talked a little bit about, my first year in office and internally what that looked like, all those good things before we went on the air this morning. But we're really opening ourselves up to the DBA, for example, the chamber, the development industry, the safe harbors of the world, the federal government, and so on, to come into one space and say, how do we work for the benefit of everyone here, as opposed to send me an email and I'll consider it, kind of thing. And I'm being, a little, literal there. But that is what we are becoming. So a superb example was the encampments that were inside that shelter, that temporary shelter, last September, and how they were dismantled, how people were encouraged to take their tents down and to move into housing or to move into services that could better suit them. And that was a collaboration of just about every agency in the downtown, including your own, and also Elder Lynn Jonathan, of course, who was very instrumental in bringing cultural appropriateness and sensitivity into that space. And it really, really worked. And I said at council yesterday, we really need to learn from experiences like that, because often the police don't have all the answers, and the city doesn't have all the answers, and the DBA doesn't have all the answers, the safe harbor, and so that's why collaboration works.
We've certainly noticed a difference with the city's approach. It's fabulous.
Thank you.
So City Council approved a recommendation to prioritize zoning and permitting processes for affordable housing and permanent supportive housing options. So, Mayor Johnston, what do these recommendations aim to assist applicants with?
Well, I'll just say, just for a little bit of lightness, that it was a busy day at council yesterday. And, these recommendations, there's two pieces to these recommendations. And obviously, we did a study a couple of years ago, based on housing needs in Red Deer from two perspectives. One was affordable housing, and the other was permanent supportive housing. And they're both equally needed in the community. So as it relates to supportive housing, there are needs in the community for probably another 175 or so spaces, and that's a huge need. And typically, this is your most acute need person who needs an on-site support to be able to function. So we have a very successful permanent supportive housing project run by Canadian Mental Health, just on the south side of the city, just before you go over the hill there, over the South Hill. That's extremely successful, but the need is great for more. On the other side, on the affordable housing side, this is where the need actually magnifies to be even greater, especially with the inflationary pressures that we're under right now, food costs, energy costs, all those kinds of rental costs, and so on. So what council did yesterday as an immediate measure, was improve the zoning process for applications from developers that are coming in to build into that space. So we want to speed up the time. And if you can speed up the time, agencies like Central Mortgage and Housing, for example, will come to the table quicker with funding to be able to get your project off the ground. That was just one of several actions that you can expect council to take in March. There's a further report coming, which is largely based in the development community and sort of getting a temperature for around how the industry looks at those two issues, how it looks at permanent supportive housing, how it looks at affordable housing. We'll have an opportunity to come back to council in March. There's a couple of things here, and I made it very clear at council yesterday in terms of how we, the mayor's office, has been running in that direction. It's very frustrating, I'll be frank. There isn't a single mid-sized city, Amanda, not a single mid-sized city in all of the country, who has any successful funding from the Rapid Housing Initiative launched by the federal government last year. No projects, whatever, across the country. So you can imagine the frustration that we feel as the mayor's office. Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation needs to be far more understandable in how they put applications together, and rather than looking around for a large book of paperwork like that, we need to get the processes down so that people can engage them. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to the further report in March. We will have to decide how much of a role that we want to play directly in that space, mm-hmm. or do we want to play directly in it? And I shouldn't use the word play. Do we want to participate in that space? It'll be interesting.
And where did the request come from? How did it start?
The request came from the Homelessness and Housing Integrated Committee, which is a committee that was established by council about 15 months ago. So that committee took the place of the old Community Housing Advisory Board, and it brings forward housing recommendations, housing funding requests, and so on. They can make their own funding decisions at that committee now. They don't have to come to council, but a report like yesterday's was more on the need for housing and how council can play a role. So I wanted to thank David Hardy. David's the chairman of that group, and the volunteers that sit on it. We have people from the business community, people from the faith community, people from mental health, people from the province, people from the federal government, and 2 of our city councilors. So it's a broad, mm-hmm. Sort of group this way. People from the Indigenous community are sitting there. So it's well sort of spread across the stakeholders. It's a busy committee, and they're going to bring us some challenging work in March.
Well, on to our final question, if you don't mind. And this is one that is very close to my heart and much lighter than some of the subjects we've been talking about this morning. And that's the Ross Street patio. So it is the #1 attraction downtown. We love it. Everybody loves it. And even more so now that it's an entertainment district. The DBA is planning on increasing the number of events it delivers this year in and around the patio area. Is there any budget set aside to make the patio permanent in order to really solidify its position as an attraction within the community?
Great question. For the first thing I'll say about the Ross Street patio itself is affirm what you've just said, that it is. And, we've taken a few of these, Shaw spotlight events on the patio and so on, had some fun doing that and so on. But I'll thank the DBA again for bringing us the idea of the entertainment district back last June or so, and how exciting that was. So kudos to you and your board, for bringing an opportunity like that to us. Now let's look at, first of all, the ambition is amazing when you think about 250 events. I mean, it may I say again, boggles the mind in that context, but how excited we were just a month or so ago when you came with your budget to say, look, we're going to launch 250 events. Your vision of the Ross Street patio is very, very similar to council's on several veins, particularly when you look at council's just released strategic plan and what it says. That's a 4-year plan and so on. And it really is, one of the founding sort of principles of that plan is thriving city and thriving downtown. So council in the last budget, operating budget, which would have been, I think, early December or so, laid aside $1.5 million to execute that strategic plan in different areas and so on. So there's opportunity there through, for example, an expanded grant program. I've had personally, in my community contacts over the last 12 months, reached into many ethnic groups, many multicultural groups and so on. And I'm really excited. I mean, you may know some of these events already that are on the sort of bubble, if you will. But my goodness, I was going to say something else. But anyway, my goodness, it's pretty exciting because these groups are starting to emerge and they're starting to be proud of their cultural days, and they want the community to join them. And what better place than to join them than here, So it's really, really exciting. There are other groups that write us and say, here's an idea, to try. And I always say, default this to the downtown, because the DBA can run with it, or we can run with it, or we both can run with it, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very exciting time. When I saw the question this morning on my way over, I said, I hope you do ask it, because I saw optional on it. So I thought, I hope you ask it, and that kind of thing, because it's going to be an exciting time on the patio this summer. Our city, like every, I would say city in Alberta and Canada, I don't think we're ever going to take for granted assembling together again, without a 6-foot, space and a mask, and all those things were necessary. But now we can get back together again, and it's just so encouraging to see an agency like yours be such a great partner of ours. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. That brings us to the end of our question. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yes. There's a few things, and I'll just say how exciting the public hearing was last night. Now, I know that's almost paradoxical. How could that be possible, Mayor Ken? A public hearing, you say, surely you jest. Well, no. So we had a public hearing last night on Capstone, and we enabled all of the development standards to be varied if the project was still congruent with the intent to build a great capstone. So what that materially did was allow developers the opportunity to actually apply for a variance, where in the old regulations there's no way you could have a variance without a land use amendment, which is tedious and time consuming and so on. So, to state the obvious, Capstone's vision and its uptick are far apart. So we really haven't had a significant uptick at all of Capstone. There's been some great projects there, the Myers-Norris project and so on, Troubled Monk and so on, have been great additions to Capstone. Our own programming has done a tremendous amount. Our square is down there, our Welcome Square, and so on. It's been a great community center, but to actually lift it off and get a return on our own taxpayers' investment, that's why we took the approach that we did. And we had a presentation from the chamber last night and also from the Construction Association inviting us to, and you used the word collaborate early in the interview, inviting us to collaborate with them on moving Capstone from their perspective, what it would look like from the private sector and so on. So this is a great invitation. It was really taken up enthusiastically by council in terms of, if the market is not buying your product, it's time to look at the product, not the market itself. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're not buying this pen, and I've tried to sell you this pen for such a long time, maybe I should look at the pen and say, maybe this is the wrong pen. I still have a market, but maybe my product's out of scope. So that was the great thing last night, and so I thought it was a great public hearing. So I'll sign off. This is Mayor Ken signing off after a wonderful council meeting yesterday with Amanda Gould here. Please come downtown, folks. I know you've heard the message from the mayor in the past. Drop in and meet Amanda and her team. You'll be extremely impressed with what's happening down here. Until next time, have a great day, Red Deer.